Hi there. So I'm Nick, and I am the Director of Curriculum at Shillington, and I am joined today by Sophie Duncan. Hi, Sophie. How you doing?
Hi, it's so good to be here.
I'm so excited to see you, and I know we've got lots to catch up on. So, Sophie, can you tell everyone the course that you studied on, please?
Yes, I was Studio C, full-time East Coast in the fall of 2025, so from September to December.
And you graduated,
December 2025.
so it's part of our 3 month course.
Yes, the
Uh,
3-month course.
Great. So, what we want to talk today about, Sophie, is your experience during the course, what you've got up to after the course, where you're at now, and we really want to focus in on one of the projects that you did for your portfolio, which I'm just mega excited about because of the process that we went through. So, before we go into that, would you like to share what you did before Shillington?
Absolutely. So I definitely am someone with a very interdisciplinary background. I was working in the environmental sector prior to Shillington. My training is as a botanist. I also studied classics, so love the humanities as well, but had then gone to graduate school for science, doing ecological work and worked at the Nature Conservancy, doing some equitable stewardship and access to nature work before being in the climate space on working on some clean energy projects in the local setting. And then had always, though, design had been a big part of everything I had done. And it was something I was always really curious about. And curiosity is what killed the cat. And it was my time to go there and explore it.
Yeah, I mean, I know throughout the course we've discussed about your career, and the really beautiful moments when the two careers of your previous career and the Shillington career and post Shillington have crossed over. But so yeah, can you just talk a bit more about what inspired you to sign up for Shillington then?
Absolutely. So I had a friend of a friend who had done it. So I had known about it for a few years before I took the plunge. I think, I'm in the era of my life where I am unabashedly pursuing my dreams, but I think to reach that point there's sort of a timid approach where you hear the thing that someone does that's really cool and you wish you could be brave enough to do it until the moment is ready. So I'd been thinking about it for a while and had been talking about it for a while. And then some really important people in my life who'd heard me talk about it for a while basically just said to me, shut up and do it. It's time. That and until the deadline it was to sign up, I hemmed and I hawed. And then right after I signed up, I thought, oh, yeah, that was absolutely the right decision. But that's often how decision making goes.
Correct in saying you signed up the week before, or was it?
Not the week before, it was the week of the early deadline to sign up.
Ah, okay, okay, cool. So yeah, can you just give a quick overview of what your Shillington experience was like? Can you encapsulate the 3 months?
Yes, the 3 months were, just an incredible period of time where I was all in. I really set up, this learning space here. I spent the 3 months, for the most part, in my room at my desk, in my office room, and I really just was fully Shillington talks about design immersion, and I 100% drank the Kool-Aid, and I, just really took that sort of call to action seriously in the sense that when I was moving through the world, if I went to New York City, I was looking at the subway system and thinking about Massimo Vignelli. And every time I was driving anywhere and looking at billboards, clocking different typefaces and different hierarchies of text, so it really was beyond the classroom for me. It was a full 3 month experience. And I decided I needed ahead of time, this was going to be a really special period of my life. I'm someone who loves learning. And so I needed to document this. And so I started a weekly newsletter through Substack where I just wanted to share with my friends and family and anyone and how that was gonna shape my trajectory and how I was thinking about design and all of the different ways it touched my life in terms of personal and professional development.
Sorry, Sophie, can you repeat where you started talking about the Substack? You went mute for a few seconds.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes, I think my headphones might die. They just said battery critical, which I did not realize. So we will see how long they last. Sometimes they last for a while.
That probably was a moment.
But oh, yeah, so I decided I needed to document, this really special experience because writing is a really big part of my designing creative process, and so I also wanted to share, and keep a record of the time and what I was learning and be able to share that with friends and family and really anyone. And so on Substack, you can find me at Rock Paper Sophie. I have a newsletter that I've kept going because, as I mentioned, design is and my writing are really tied together because design is about thinking and it's about relationships with other people, and writing is one vehicle for that.
Yeah, I can remember when you shared that with us as well, and like we took a dive into it. I didn't realize you'd only started just before the course, but yeah, I mean, what you just mentioned there, like your storytelling was a really key thing that you brought to class, but also that you saw in your work, in your portfolio, and your way with words and language, which was really great. And that's something that, as one of the teachers in your class, was something where I could look at and go, well, let's definitely like explore and exploit that and bring it into your design work as much as we can. And I think you did that really, really well. And just how you articulated it as well when we did the grad show. I mean, how did you find that when you had to present your work to a wider audience for the first time who had no inkling of what you'd been working on or the journey you'd been on?
It was so fun at the grad show to get to both see everyone's work and share my work. Whenever I'm working on a design project, I have the story in my head of the audience I'm designing for, the brand, tone of voice. Like there's a whole story happening in my head, and I'm often writing about it too, but I don't always get to share that. I'm often just sharing the design piece of it. And so it was really fun to get to bring everyone into the deep nitty gritty sort of details and research and how it all links together. And so that felt really fun because I just felt like I had sort of a slot of time where I was allowed to just totally nerd out and bring everyone with me.
It was great. And I remember as well, like, you were the biggest hype leader. I don't know what the word is. I'm trying to be younger than I actually am here, but you were bringing so much hype to everyone else's projects. I can remember your sort of celebration of work, and also that what you mentioned before about when you were in New York and you were seeing about type and hierarchy. And as the course progressed, it became more apparent where your inspiration and love, there's a particular area of design that you started to really grow in interest. Can you explain that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So and it's funny because something I had forgotten until I think maybe the end of Shillington is that I had always been interested in type design, but I forgot that I had talked to a professor of typography when I was an undergrad. I was at Brown and RISD was next door, and you could theoretically cross enroll, but I was really intimidated because I was in that timid period where I knew I had dreams but didn't know how to get there, sort of the foothills leading up to the mountain. And I remember talking to this professor and just thinking, it's already too late. I was maybe 19, but in my head, I was like, it's already too late. It's over. There's just too much work and I'm so behind and I have to give that up. Type design is going to have to be another lifetime, not this one. And then through Shillington, and then also in a similar period of time, my dad showed me the movie Helvetica, and it quickly became my favorite movie. And since then, I've told everyone they have to watch it. And then during Shillington, I got to be working with type and exploring typography and layout and customizing type, and I just fell in love with it. And I really fell in love with the details and specificity, and just how much finesse. And there's this science to it, and there's a math to it, but there's also an art of just sort of millimeters and movement, and shifting things that have an impact. And what that sort of like, it's one of the places of digital design where there's still very much a hand touch, and that sort of handmade piece of design, even in the digital space, is something I really care a lot about and am excited and motivated by. And by the end of Shillington, had fully embraced that type was what I was obsessed with. And now I'm enrolled in Cooper Union's continuing education type design course. And so Shillington really allowed me to explore that and embrace that was something that I still had time to do and it was time to get started on.
Yeah, it is brilliant. And the amount of inspiration you brought to us as teachers, as well as the other students, is something really great to witness. And I think the project we're going to talk about is specifically inspired by that. But do you want to share your screen now and just give a quick
Yeah.
introduction to the project, what it was initially before portfolio? So let's talk about it before portfolio time and kind of the process you went through and where you got to at the end of the initial brief.
Absolutely. So this was a project where we were developing a brand, and there were different categories we could choose from. I chose the soap one, because I thought soap is so boring. I was really interested in exploring that. Everyone was sort of saying soap is so boring. And including me, and I'm someone who likes a nice fragrant soap, but I was like, I'm really interested in how to sort of that's a challenge for me as a designer. If I'm like soap boring, that's like I like a challenge, and so I was excited to really dive into that and think about how to get myself so excited about soap, I couldn't stop talking about it.
I remember actually on your working document now, I forgot about this, but like seeing it's kind of like a stream of consciousness, wasn't it? So where we get to explore your working document so we can give you feedback. And there was just like, is it boring? This is so boring. And like you kind of started asking your own question and answering it as well.
Yeah, and just like
Great.
boring soap for boring people, and this
Yeah.
was like a plant-based soap, and I thought, of course, a boring plant-based organic natural soap made out of compost for people like me who would love that. It just sort of this trope that I was like, it's those moments as a designer when you are the also one of the target audiences and you see yourself from that perspective, and just sort of the inevitability of certain lineages. And so I was interested in sort of disrupting that.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because obviously there you're thinking it's kind of going to be a formulaic approach. So what helped you sort of push past that? How did you get past that?
Yeah, and this is where I think one of the things during Shillington that was initially the most challenging that the curriculum really allowed me to grow in is the concept development work, and really pushing into lateral thinking and not just taking something at the surface value, but going as far out as you can to find an idea, and doing that in a way that is authentic to my own process, but is really pushing me in my own process. And so that meant for me really leaning into the brainstorming side of all of the areas where soap through the history of humankind possibly could touch our lives, and the um, different symbolic and cultural and medicinal ways that soap has played into our lives. And so I that took me in so many different directions. And so I did that brainstorming and iterated over and over and over again until I got to places that I thought were not boring and interesting to me.
And that was great because that helped you really harness the brief and get really excited about it and take it into a direction. And this is obviously where you got to at the end of the initial brief, where we had, was it 2.5, 3 days to come up with the story, the name, the ideation, like you said. Can you just talk a little bit about the name and the ideation, where it came from for the
Yeah,
final?
so absolutely. So the name Andromeda refers to a galaxy. It's also a constellation. So it has this classical resonance, but also this astronomical resonance. And it's the galaxy that it's the nearest galaxy that we can see from our own. So this idea that we can see a galaxy from our own galaxy, and it's a spiral galaxy. It's I think the nearest spiral galaxy. So our galaxy, the Milky Way, is a spiral galaxy. Andromeda is a spiral galaxy, and so it's this sort of going really far away to learn about yourself and bring that back to Earth. And this playing of the micro to the macro, and soap sort of felt like this, where it's soap is really about this chemical process and different elements together that bind in a certain way that create cleanliness, which opens up this sort of spiritual space of cleanliness through the history of time. And then it also, in terms of the physical elements that are going into soap and where the earth came from, going back to the Big Bang. So there's just all these different ways that this tiny little sort of molecular idea can explode in infinite directions.
And even, yeah, I love listening to you talking about this. But already the way you're talking, there's already quite early on in your Shillington experiences crossover between your past career, even though it wasn't direct subject matter, but in the sense of the climate, the environment, the science side of it as well, and then bringing this into your design sort of thinking. Um, would you say that's true? Sorry, am I?
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. I think that When I am approaching design, it's one of the ways that I get to draw on my background in research and in science and in thinking about the natural world and all the different valencies that we can look at the world through where there are I in my background in within botany was really interested in evolution, and so sort of within evolution it's this way of categorizing the history of life, and within that to look at it really taxonomically with order and family and genus and species. And so looking at something on all of these different levels is something that I'm really interested in. So when we're thinking about soap, like what are all of the different levels? Like what's the most macro level of soap and what's the most micro level of soap? And what are all the different possible categorizations and hybrid ideas in between? So I definitely sort of bring that lens I whenever I am doing a design project, because I just think that that sort of categorical way of thinking, it's one of those classic ways where structure can actually open up flexibility. And so if I bring sort of a structure to my brainstorming that is this hierarchy of groupings, then it sort of takes me in really unexpected directions that I can follow in a more fluid way.
We're going to explore that very shortly, aren't we? Because this is obviously where we got to at the end of the subject.
Apparently, when your headphones die, it kicks you off.
Is it recording your side still?
I think it said it, yeah, yes, it is recording.
It says record. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Yes. Sorry
Uh,
about that.
it's fine. I was like, what happened? Are you able to share your screen again? Sorry. It's really
Um,
great. So I feel like I'm really enjoying,
It's very
again,
fun.
the enthusiasm for a project is just like really, really great. So yeah, you were talking about or you were talking about brainstorming then and your process from your previous career and your that sort of scientific structured mind, and then how that actually gives you a lot of flexibility. So this was where the project got to at the end of portfolio time. Not the end of portfolio time. This is where the project got to at the end of the actual subject. And then we come to portfolio time where you get to pick projects to go into your final portfolio and you can revisit them. So was this always a contender for your final
Yes,
portfolio?
I think so. This was one that could be, it was a contender because I wasn't satisfied with where I had got it to, partially because one of the wonderful things about Shillington is that you're learning how to do things and you're learning how to do them the right way and the wrong way. And I had, in making this, in trying to achieve something, crashed my computer using the brush tool in Illustrator because I fundamentally didn't understand RAM and how that impacted space on the computer, which I now, I have my literal crash course in. And so because of that, I just didn't, there was this whole idea I had with that sort of micro to macro and using the brush tool to scatter all of these different little pieces and have it create galaxies and all, just this direction I didn't get to explore because of a technological limitation. And so even though I made something that, was finished, it didn't feel finished to me. And so I was really excited during portfolio time to get my second bite at the apple.
Yeah, and we were really excited as well to get this portfolio into your portfolio. So if you can zoom out a little bit now, can you just start talking us through the first stage of when this went into portfolio? Because to me, as a teacher, and Carl, we worked with you during portfolio time. We saw a massive evolution in your process and skill. The process, like before you even get on the tools, but then on the tools as well. So can you just talk about the research side on this, please? And then just zoom in and show us around any sort of key moments.
Absolutely. So in terms of the research side, I'll briefly take you over here where I was thinking about things on my mood boards. And to build these mood boards, I was thinking about you. So these are where I arrived at after my research and started to sketch, but to get there, so that's the really pared down version. So my journey to there was a really uh profound profound exploration. So this is very zoomed out, but my concept was really built around this idea of the luminescent void, getting at that everything and nothingness. That thinking also of the bath as this place that's a sort of a liminal space. People have shower thoughts. It can be a source of inspiration. but also is this quiet time. There's a mindfulness component, and the sort of phase changes that soap goes through to become soap, and the phase changes we go through. I know that I feel like a different human after I shower. Sometimes you just need to take a shower and start all over. And so, just sort of thinking about this tension between everything and nothing. So
Yeah,
I
can you show us some of the, like, a bit more closer, like some of the journey and the narrative you went through as you started your research? Because there's some phenomenal stuff in this page here.
Yeah, so I started and when I do my research, I'm really interested in sort of this web like web like trains of thought. So how do I think about this idea of the luminescent void on a typographic level and all of the different places that starts to take me? Um and I use design websites to research, but I also will just, use like actual research websites about the Hubble telescope and sort of using my interest in the world as material, using everything. So I'm not just limited to design websites; those can help get me started. But I'm thinking about the the James Webb Telescope and telescopes as flying cameras that see time, and this way of time being this piece of it. And that, how does that factor into something as simple as a gradient, which is maybe a visual element or component, but actually can have this deeper meaning when we're thinking about it in the sense of deep time. And hold on, let's go over here. And then sort of getting at baths and sponges and that, and, just thinking about you like, what are, once again, going to the real physical, like, what are the materials for a bath? And then the cosmic sponge. And we have this sponge fossil here. Fossils are rocks, and then there are space rocks, and then we're made of stardust, and then there are the moon trees, which are these seeds that were brought on, I think, Apollo 14 and circled the moon and then brought back to Earth and then planted, and they were forgotten and then remembered. And then on an Artemis recently, they went back, they put more seeds up to go around the moon. And then from sponges, we go to slime molds and quantum foam and sponge skeletal systems and the cosmic web. And, we're thinking about a sponge fossil or a sponge skeleton. And then we're also thinking about the cosmic web. And actually, there's a relationship there, like a real scientific relationship between sponges and the cosmos, which is how scientists came to the cosmic sponge idea. And getting to then quantum foam, and are black holes just a fossil in the sky? And with sound waves, as people listen to black holes, so is we can play those sounds, is a black hole having a dance party? So also moving into a little bit the surreal and the abstract, and following rational and scientific roots, but not being limited by sort of fairy tale storytelling and imagination, because it gets really metaphysical. And webs take us back to networks, and so there's all of these different branching ways. And so within the confines of an evening, I spent an evening doing this exploration, um and just let myself, and this was where I was really felt like I started to discover my process, and where I really started to take ownership over the fact that I was going to get really expansive, and it was going to get weird, and it was going to maybe even read like a weird and broken poem, but that I was going to be able to find elements of this that actually could make sense. And then I could, distill into a single or two mood boards. And so it's this distillation process that I really gave myself. And then I applied this to my other portfolio projects, and it became a really helpful way to sort of develop what does my process look like. Giving myself permission for that to look different than maybe I had expected, what a designer's process to look like.
So it sounds like a real breakthrough moment for you in how to approach a project. Do you agree on that? Can you sort
Oh,
of?
absolutely. I think because I had been hitting this wall, and I think anytime you're approaching a redesign of something, you've already done it, and you're like, I have to re-explore everything. And so to psych myself up for that, I just gave myself permission to do what I was excited about and interested in, and where there was momentum, which was just learning about all of the ways that the cosmos could touch down with soap. that permission, I think like a lot of Shillington was about learning that there was permission to just try really wild things, and that, whether it's your teachers or your clients, you will be reined in. There will be constraints, you will be reined in. But if you don't go out really wild and you don't go in the ways that you're excited about, what you end up with when it's reined in is not going to be something that you feel satisfied
I think that's really true. Like, and it was palpable, that excitement that you came into class with that next day when we had those chats. So we have those chats day to day during portfolio where we like to discuss what you've worked on, your research, and yeah, that's really palpable, and you could see your confidence grow. So can you now just start to talk through just some of the iterations you did, because this is where then you started to really explore type, and even just showing those references you've got from all of your research that weren't graphical, that were from science sort of research and links or whatever it might be. Can you just zoom in and just talk through then how you brought that into the programs? Because this was where it got really exciting.
Yeah. So I started doing a lot of sketching. I always start on paper. And I was interested in this. So for the name Andromeda and the letter form, and one of the ways to get at the this micro to macro tension is having everything distilled into the single. Like, how do I have this whole concept contained in a single letter? If I can get the whole concept and the whole brand contained in a single letter, then I can build that out in any direction. But I need to like really nail the typeface and how it's presented. And so I really was drawing all sorts of different things and writing Andromeda over and over and over again. And I still hadn't honed in on a typeface yet, but I was thinking about, can I build it out of different components, sort of this molecular thinking. And then this is where I started to say, okay, but what if that sort of molecular level was just the letter A? And I wasn't sure what typeface's letter A that was going to be quite yet, but I knew it was going to be the letter A. And that was one of the things that I had retained from my original design, was that the letter A was going to be really important as sort of the foundational atomic unit of this design. And so then I just was really, you can't tell those are all letter A's. Can the letter A, can I turn it upside down and it becomes a meteor shower? And sort of this idea of showers and meteor showers and all of the different ways that soap can thread through that. And you can reference soap um, and not be so literal.
I
And
mean,
so
yeah, well, I've almost forgot we're talking about a soap brand here, because like it's just gone so lateral now, and I love this. And this is where it really started to stand out. Sorry, carry on though.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so then I really started to do, and this is a fraction of them, but just start to play with different fonts and typefaces and different weights and pairings, and seeing what would stick the landing. And I also continued to do over here. You can see I did also run into issues with my computer here because we have the letter A. These were really big files. I learned about how to work with things like this and save them properly, because process does really matter how you do it. And I started to get these weird sort of flower fan machine shapes. And that started to really capture this galactic component that tapped into that imagination. And I settled on this typeface here, which is Chamber Sands Pro. And Chamber Sands, it turned out when I did my research, and I was so excited about this, it was made by Brina Gerlach, and it was based on a 17th century book that I think she had found at some market somewhere, that had a handwritten note about fleas. So you can't get more micro than that. To and then she wanted to combine that with enamel street signs and figure out how to get elements from both of those things contained. So it's a typeface that contains this tension in itself.
Was that the typeface you messaged me overnight?
Yes.
That one, very like, I'm so excited about. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that
that
now.
was great. Yeah, I was so excited. I didn't know that when I chose it. I just had this feeling about this typeface. And so it's really cool. And that was really where I started to realize that like these the incredible specificity of the directions of my research type can be one of those ways that I sort of embed ideas and concepts into that actually can create a feeling that someone like, the idea that I found this typeface looking for this cosmic then earth connection and it being sort of this pairing of contrasts and this typeface designed to contain tension felt really cool. And so I was really excited about that.
And then can you show us how it then worked into the final packaging 3D design? Because obviously
Oh
you need
yes,
to bring
absolutely.
it and make it into a working piece of design, haven't you? So
Yes,
yeah,
because here come the constraints. The constraints will always be there. And, I was on this journey. It was so fun. I was exploring outer space. I was taking field trips to the moon. But at the end of the day, this was a packaging brief. And that's one of the reasons why I love thinking about packaging is it's such a real world application. And it has to be functional. You really need your packaging to work as packaging. And you have to think about dye lines and bleed and someone physically handling this and what it's going to look like on a shelf in the world. And so I I was oh, a cube in conversations with Nick, this conversation about like what shape should the package be? And a cube felt really symmetrical but also futuristic at the same time rather than the original rectangle that the first mock-up I did had. And so taking that cube idea and really wanting the images to be texturally based. And so um, this is spelling out Andromeda, but almost as a meteor shower and sort of this almost different waves and different densities and frequencies of it. And these radial shapes that are evocative of that sponge fossil. The sponge fossil ended up coming back. And I am someone who wants to do the really maximalist approach. And then also, what does it look like if it's really pared back? And that push and pull where you put everything in and then you take everything out to find the balance.
and
And definitely,
even though some of those didn't make the final design, you repurposed them elsewhere, didn't you, in the presentation?
yes, yes. And that was also fun is I save everything because you never know when something is going to come back.
Mhm.
And when something is going to be the perfect image to convey an idea when you're rolling out a design. And so these were all just different, thinking through what was capturing the the spirit of the product as a soap. And so I was able to use some of those in the final rollout. And then I started to, really dial that in terms of what were then some of the core images. And this was the one we landed on for the actual panels of the box. And then when it when it came time to exploring what rollout would look like, what Nick just said, where even though I didn't use all of them for the actual packaging sides, several of these images, would work for a rollout campaign where you're introducing or giving a sneak peek of something and it has this sort of mystique and it's really zoomed in and then you're able to zoom out and capture what it is you're actually looking at when you zoom out. And so I was able to use a lot of the different ideas and also just let myself explore in a lot of different ways. What could this product look like if it was photographed for a website, for a magazine, for a lot of different applications.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I love that. I can remember, you didn't just stop going, right, I've got the 3D design for it, like the way you were doing overlays, you were doing opacities, you were doing textures to it, and it just took that like otherworldly sort of approach, like some of those where you just mentioned, and if you just zoom to the bottom, can you zoom in and just go towards the bottom?
Hmm.
Like that one there with the shine on it as well, just on the left. It's like there's so much you explored. And was this using AI as well in this for some of
No,
these?
no. And so I, in general, this is not a universal rule, but in general, I don't use AI for my images because I'm like really interested in the relationship between the physical world and the computer world. And when I start working with AI, and I explored AI during Shillington, but when I start working with AI and things like Illustrator, it's much more a computer relationship and opaque to me. And I really like to have my hands in it that for the storytelling piece and to be able to tell that story. It's almost like the process is the thread you then weave the story with. And so even some of these photos were just my own photos of the moon because there is a personal relationship to that. And I'm just interested in exploring that. And I think a really open ended question in this moment that we're in is if you abstract physical human made things into digital design, can people tell what role artificial intelligence had in this and what is the human resonance? And that's an open ended question. I don't know. But I do know for me as the storyteller of this brand for this project, it was really important to have a relationship with the material I was working with in this specific instance.
Incredible. So, can you just share in that document? There is a page where you've got the actual project laid out in your portfolio. Mm, I think it's that one, isn't it? So, if you just zoom into those pages in particular,
Yeah.
please go to sleep. That was me typing that, wasn't it? Please go to sleep.
Oh, yeah. The please go to sleep. Yeah. The last 3 weeks of the program, I did not sleep. This is true. This is true. And I got sick. And it was not, I felt like an undergraduate student again. I had not experienced that level of finals mode sleep deprivation in a very long time.
Yeah, because obviously the different time zones, me being in the UK, me and Carl being in the UK, and obviously you working on the East Coast, we'd be logging on in the morning to see what work had been submitted, and you'd still be working 5 hours before class. It's like, go to sleep, Sophie, but
Yes.
you were still there with all the energy. So I suppose, like, what are the things of your process, and as you talk through it, what elements of your process do you think this project is highlighting? Well, we've touched on it a lot, but like, I think just to kind of encapsulate it into a just to encapsulate it really like a summary of like the sort of process that you've shown here.
Yeah. So I think my process here that it's really encapsulating the how I'm interested in exploring this tension between the digital and the analog, the micro and the macro, density and sparseness, texture, movement, stillness, and how those elements all come together in different projects in different ways to tell a story. And so to tell this story, especially because this was a story I was building for this product while I was learning about my own process, it was very much needing to go to the extremes of the different places to find what would work for me. I think the piece of my process that this really allowed me to distill was giving myself full reign to explore and just permission to get really weird with it and trust that my teachers or a client or myself would be able to return to the brief and say, okay, this is a package. It's going to be a cube. It's going to have 6 sides. How do you take all of those ideas and put them on 6 sides? How do you put them on a website? And then thinking about, how would you put that in a social media post or a magazine and just really getting nitty gritty, what is the type lockup for the logo? And what's the brand board? And just like getting really specific and trusting that there's going to be that I and others have the ability to give that feedback, but sort of allowing my wild side to be incredibly wild is what was going to be my strength. And that was really a big breakthrough for me.
Yeah, I think that, and like if you can just scroll through some of these pages, like again, just I think for me, like, yeah, you can see like, wait, this is a great page where you had that the one on the right hand side, where you did have those letters like you were talking about before, where it had the sense of a meteor shower, but you didn't bring that as a focal point in the packaging. You can see it on the packaging, but you were able to repurpose that and reuse it rather than just having the blank mock-up, and using them experimentations and still implementing them in interesting ways. I think was a real beautiful moments in your portfolio. Great.
Awesome.
So, you can stop sharing now, Sophie, on that. I think that's amazing.
Let me go press the button. There we go.
So obviously that one was that. Do you feel that's where your love of type emerged, or like really got cemented, or do you think it developed before then? Or how do you think that helped in that process?
Yeah, yeah, I think that process, and I think the experience of being in the role of the designer, looking for a typeface that just felt right for the project and spoke to me, and then learning about this when I was doing research on my typefaces after I chose, realizing that that was what the type designer intended for it to feel like, and realizing how cool that was, that their goal in making this actually landed in how it felt and how I was applying it, and that there can be this through line through type, and why, all through Shillington, every instructor said your type choices really make or break your work. And at first I was like, I think in my first review a month in, George, I think, asked me, what happened to serif typefaces? And I was like so scared to use a serif typeface. I was so scared. I was like, basically just like, I'm just going to use Helvetica adjacent typefaces, and maybe sometimes I'll make them bold to be experimental. And just, I think the arc of then saying, okay, like I'm going to go explore the library of typefaces. Recently, I had to clear out a bunch I had downloaded through Adobe because I had 9,000 downloaded, I think, that I did during Shillington. Um,
Wow.
like I really did a deep dive, and so I had to be like, okay, we gotta clear some of this out. But I think just allowing myself to go from the place of being so scared to try something to then really immersing myself in the world of type, and Andromeda being the place where then I was thought, oh, there is a designer who made this with a goal. I felt that without even knowing what the goal was. That's really powerful, and that's why type is powerful, and I wanna learn how to make that. And that, like, I think really I was like, I wanna be the person because I collect all sorts of archival materials because of the handwriting component and the type component. So I have sort of like an arsenal ready to go for making my own typefaces, which is why I'm in a type design course now, because I was like, I'm ready to do this. This is actually
So
what I've been preparing for.
it's why I love this, like this accumulation of just like inspiration, even before the course, from your past career, just any inspiration you've seen anyway, putting it into action at Shillington. But now the next stage is you've pursued type further. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. And so I am really excited. This is the first type design class of many, but I just have realized that I love graphic design. I also am interested in type design. I'm also interested in typography. I think one of the reasons I took the, and I thought before I took this type design class, I thought I might hate type design. It's really technical. You have to be super picky. I'm technical about what I am technical about, and I am not technical about what I am not technical about. Turns out I really like being technical about type, but I didn't know that. And so I thought, maybe I will hate making type, but at least I will get to know the letter form really well and get to work with it as a designer and be really good at that. It turns out that I want to do both, and I want to do typography work where I'm doing layout and getting into, all of each character and where they sit, and then also doing the actual type modification and design itself. So I think that is an exciting exploration. And I think it's one of those things where I'm like, I get to do that for the rest of my life. And that feels really cool.
Well, look forward to seeing the first Sophie Duncan typeface. So
Yes.
once that is all created, you need to let us know. And so obviously we've spoken about, doing that course, but can you talk about just work you've been doing post Shillington?
Absolutely. And, I think in this global moment we're in, I think I just want to acknowledge how hard employment is right now, not just for creatives, but for so many people. And so I just am so grateful for all the people in my life who are encouraging me to keep my chin up and giving me positive feedback and cheering me on. You have to have cheerleaders to make it through this moment. I've just been talking to everyone I know. Now is the time that conversations are so helpful in my career journey, and it's been so helpful to hear from designers about how hard it is to get started, and that the first bit is just hard. And there's going to be days where you feel amazing, and there's going to be days that just feel like a slog, and you don't know what you're doing. And so I've been applying to jobs, and I've also just been freelancing, and did let my friends and family know that I was open to freelance work. And then I've just been reaching out to people I see who are doing work I'm excited about or have opportunities for freelance work, and just sharing the things about me as a designer that I could contribute to their work and letting them know the ways in which I'm different. And for some people that resonates and some people it doesn't. And it's been really exciting that there are people that resonates for, and I think that that's been, no, I knew ahead of time that there was going to be a lot of rejection, but what I didn't anticipate was all of the acceptance and excitement around my work and just the different ways that I'm doing a brand refresh with a campground software called Park With Us. And I'm doing some work with a local design firm here that I'm about to start this week that I'm over the moon about. There's a laundry list of different little and big projects I've been working on, but I think the amount of learning I've done post Shillington, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities to keep learning.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Obviously, just hearing about these experiences, what you've been doing, and like this new one you've got lined up, really, really exciting and thoroughly deserved with just like the effort you put in, like at Chillington, and just the experimentation, the quality of work. I think the experimentation is the thing that really helps you stand out. That's only going to hold you in good stead into your career. I suppose just one last thing is like kind of how has Chillington helped you when you've approached these projects or work that you've done since Chillington?
The first brief I had from a freelance client, I almost laughed because I thought, oh my gosh, this is just like a Shillington brief. And I thought, of course, like Shillington did that on purpose. Like that is why I did Shillington, because it was going to allow me to experiment and get weird, but also be very practical. I am an artist, but I have a design practice and I'm building my own studio because I like design because it's functional and it's in relation to other people and it's for a purpose and it is practical. And so it just was funny to be realizing, be like, oh my God, this is just like a Shillington brief. And then thinking, oh yeah, they designed that curriculum to be just like what working in the world would be like.
Yeah. Uh,
um, And
Sorry,
so
Karen.
that's been really, I think, really heartening just in terms of, and should be good feedback for you guys about how well prepared we are. And, there's a lot of hard learning when you're doing something new and not in a classroom. But oftentimes I will say when I make a mistake, I think, oh yeah, I remember XYZ teacher saying, don't do that. There's a lot of learning by doing, but I think so much of it comes back to the lessons we learned in class that really live in my head and are incredibly helpful, even if they come a little too late in terms of my recall. But then I'll never forget it.
Oh, incredible. Well, that's amazing. Any sort of parting words maybe to anyone considering Shillington?
I think say your dreams out loud and follow them. I was so scared for so long to say I wanted to do design. I thought it was sounded ridiculous when I said it. I was like, everyone wants to be a designer, like I can't do that. And I just had all these voices that were being so negative in my head. But then the second I started to say it out loud, it meant that people in my life would follow up. So the friends and family and loved ones who were like, just shut up and do it were the ones that I had said out loud, I want to do this. And I think, being brave enough to say it out loud, even if it's just with yourself in a closet, like whatever you have to do to just say it out loud, start saying it out loud, start writing it out loud, and then just sign up for the thing. Investing in your own education is just truly the greatest gift. I feel like I sound like my parents being like, education's the most important thing. But it really is. And I think the other thing about the Shillington learning community is everyone who is there wants to be there, and is serious about it and cares about it. And so you come out of it with a really incredible community of people. And I've stayed in touch with my cohort. And sometimes we do online co-working together and support each other.
Oh, wow,
Stay in
yeah, that's
touch.
amazing.
And so, yeah, I think like the community piece of it and having a community of people who are all passionate about it is a really special piece. Design really for me is about relationships. And so that piece of Shillington was also really special.
Incredible. Oh, well, thank you, Sophie. Honestly, it's been really great to obviously hear your insights when you've been able to decompress from the Shillington experience and like have a little bit of space before it. So, sorry, between it. So it's been really great. It's been really good to hear about your journey. It's been great to see and talk through your work. And again, get me excited again about like how excited you are about it. That's a really great.
It's so fun. It's so cool.
It is, yeah. And like I said, we've shown your project to some of our class to show about experimentation, going back and doing research and where that can take you. And I think, like hopefully people seeing this will be able to see that firsthand as well. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.